From being sick, homebound, and in bed for several weeks, losing several family members unexpectedly within months of each other, to balancing life as a single divorced mom of three, I had my fair share of stress, loneliness, and grief. During that time of transition, that's when A Caring Voice for You was created, a nationwide support service for anyone going through stress, loneliness, grief, and honestly, anything in between. Life can be tough, and having conversations about the challenges we are faced with can make the difference. We all have our ups and downs, so why not share strategies on how to overcome what we are up against? Welcome to Conversations with Davina, Becoming an Overcomer.
Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad you're here tonight. We have something truly meaningful lined up, and I'm so excited to share it all with you. If you know someone who could use a dose of inspiration or encouragement, take a moment to share this channel with them. It's always better when we uplift each other. Don't forget to join the conversation in the comments. I'd love to hear what resonates most with you tonight. If you haven't met me before, I'm Davina, the founder of A Caring Voice for You. Our mission is to provide support, encouragement, and connection for anyone facing stress, loneliness, grief, or honestly, everything in between. Whatever challenges you're navigating, I want you to know you are not alone. We're here to walk this journey with you and support you. So, tonight I'm honored to introduce our special guest, Bethel Stevens, author of the recently released book, Not a Cinderella Story. Bethel's story is one of love, loss, and resilience, and she's here to share her journey of rediscovering hope when life doesn't go as planned. Trust me, you'll walk away feeling inspired and truly uplifted. Don't forget to join us every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern for powerful conversations about overcoming life's challenges and finding strength together. After each session, we invite you to join our private support group where you can connect, reflect, and grow in nurturing spaces. Visit caringvoiceforyou.com to learn more and reserve your spot while it's still available. Also, be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss one of our weekly conversations. Now, it's my absolute pleasure and joy to introduce tonight's amazing guest, Bethel Stevens. Bethel is an inspiring author, speaker, and mental health advocate. Her debut book, Not a Cinderella Story, is a heartfelt and powerful narrative about love, loss, and finding the strength to persevere when life goes off script. As a young widow, she navigated profound grief and now dedicates her life to helping others reimagine their future with hope and resilience. Combining her passion for neuroscience with insights from bereavement science, she sheds light on mental and emotional aspects of grieving process in ways that resonates deeply with her audience. A proud first-generation Ethiopian American, she resides in Washington, D.C. with her loyal companion, a pug named Prince. Her journey is a testament to the power of courage and faith, and I know you're going to be moved by what she has to share. Let's give a warm welcome to Bethel Stevens. Welcome. I'm so glad that you're here today.
Thank you. Thank you, Davina. Glad to be here.
So, I appreciate just you being able to join me today to come on to share your story and help uplift others who may be going through something similar or going through loss in itself. So, can you share a little bit about yourself and also what prompted you to write the book that you will share with us all today?
Sure. As you mentioned, I am widowed. I became a widow at the age of 33. My husband passed away from cancer. And at that time, I found that experience very isolating, and I felt extremely invisible with the pain that I was trying to navigate. And I wished that at the time when I was looking for resources, that there was something that kind of peeled back the veil and said, these are the things that they don't talk about because grief is very sanitized, right? These are the
Mm-hmm.
things to expect. These feelings, these emotions, these experiences um, that I was going through at the time. Nobody else was really talking about it, right? Grief is just a part of life, and therefore you're expected to sort of take it on and move forward. And I really struggled.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wrote the book for the person that is me from 3 years ago or 2 years ago when this first happened, to be able to share with raw, honest vulnerability, the messiness of things, the non sanitized version of that grief. Because I think if we're really vulnerable enough, then we can
Mm-hmm.
really connect authentically and show people, hey, you're not alone, you're not crazy. And I think that could go a long way to then say, now when I share, hey, this is where I am, you can appreciate how far I've come if I really take you with me, right? And a lot of
Yeah.
times, because the question is, well, how did you do it? What was the process you went through? That's where the meat is, right?
Yeah.
So that is why I wrote it. And I truly hope that it is helpful and insightful to somebody going through grief and tragedy. But for somebody who's not and wants to perhaps get a deeper level of understanding, that they can come away with that cognitive empathy where I don't know what you're going through because I'm not experiencing the same emotion, but the depth of what
Mm-hmm.
I've read about this has given me a deeper, richer understanding that I can empathize at a deeper level with you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's powerful. I think what you shared a little bit ago about just letting people know that they're not alone and that they can connect with you on some shape or form um, is very helpful to anyone going through grief and loss. So I appreciate you sharing that. So let's dive in just a little bit deeper. I'm going to ask you a couple more questions. What are some of the most challenging aspects of dealing with grief and shifting your identity?
Mm. Yeah, that's a good one. And I will say this, Davina, um, even though I had lost, a grandmother before, this
Hmm.
loss was very different, right? Losing
Right.
a spouse, and I just didn't know this was what grief is like, right? So the book is written obviously from my perspective of experiencing close grief for the first time. And it's one of those things where you think but the
Hmm.
experience of it is completely different than what you thought. I used to think grief was mostly sadness or just sadness, and it's
Hmm.
it's an emotion that is so much deeper than that, multi-layered. And some of the most challenging things I would say is that, unlike certain emotions like anger where there's a little bit of control, grief was very involuntary in that it comes in intense waves. And I realized that that's just something you have to surrender to. And sometimes, or a lot of times, there's triggers, there's things that completely set you off that you didn't even see coming, right?
Hmm.
And that made it scary, that made it unpredictable, that made it extremely disorienting. And then I quote studies in the book about how it actually impacts your cognitive performance too, memory loss.
Hmm.
And there's even the brain trying to come to terms with expecting to see someone at the same place, and not being able to reconcile reality with the expectation and what the brain has already encoded in you to always expect. That takes a lot of time. So I struggled a lot with that. And the reason I wanted to share a lot of that is because family members, people who love and care about you sometimes would be like, I wish you would move on, or I wish you could, you know what I mean? There's so many
Yes.
well-meaning people who don't want to see you suffer. And they don't understand when I'm trying to explain, I'm trying, right?
Right.
So when you really dig into what's going on in your brain, what's going on emotionally, then I started to understand, no, this is part of the process, and I have to kind of let that take hold. And sometimes, right, sometimes we suppress grief. Sometimes we feel the pressure, like I felt the pressure to be
Hmm.
okay when you're really not. And I'm a big proponent of feeling your grief and learning how to navigate it and learning how to carry it, because whether you address it or not, whether you acknowledge it or not, it's there. And I think it's better to let it out, cry it out, feel those feelings. And in my case, sometimes it was peaceful to do it away from family members who have the urge to fix you, when no, it's something that you just have to kind of experience and walk through. And then kind of life happens alongside it, right?
Okay.
Because
Yes.
something this profound will change you. And we could talk about this a little bit later. And we have a decision to make, or we have control over how we allow it to change us. But it absolutely is going to change you.
You touched upon a few little, actually, I think big points, or I call them nuggets, that I wanted to kind of backtrack a little bit on. You talked about triggers. A lot of people don't realize that there are so many things that can trigger you, and have you reflect on just loss or what you're going through at moments when you think you may be okay. And you touched upon, just being around family in different situations that you may get triggered and bring you back to a point where you thought you may be healed or you may be okay at that moment, but then something happens and it's like you're walking backwards in a sense. Um, if you
Yeah,
don't mind, can you just share a little bit more about when you have kind of gone through that point, or felt like you were triggered, or you were around family who just didn't get it, who just didn't understand? You were doing the best that you could at that particular time. Um, can you just share a little bit more about that, and what were some ways or things that helped you during that time?
sure. So the triggers, and something that did help me was going through Grief Share. So it's a grief support group. It's online, and they do it. I mean, obviously it's virtual, but most big cities have it. It's highly accessible to anybody who can use that sort of group setting. Um,
Hmm.
but I learned there's a trigger, which is there's certain days, whether it's birthdays, anniversaries, whatever the case may be, where it is you kind of already know that's going to be a difficult one. And there's such a thing as an ambush, where, like I said, grief can be unpredictable. I've broken down crying at a Lowe's hardware store, okay, over something that I didn't anticipate, right?
Hmm.
um there was first time I decided I'm gonna go work out again, right? I signed up for a workout class, and I had to complete a form, and I got to the line that said emergency contact. Broke down crying. Why? Because I hadn't memorized any other phone numbers except my husband, and that was the first time I was having to undergo that point where I just realized I don't have an emergency contact, right? I need to figure out who that is now. So
Right.
those things were difficult, and after you go through it once or twice, then you're training your brain. Okay, then I know for the third, fourth time I could get through this and maybe not break down, right? But those
Hmm.
happen in steps. And then I did want to go back and tie it to a question you asked me earlier about identity.
Hmm.
first time I'm filling out one of those forms, and it said single, married, widowed. I broke down crying because, oh, that's me now. I have to be in this whole new category. So there's all of these moments that are so hard. And with family, the sort of jerk reaction, especially because they love you and care about you, is please stop crying. Like, please be okay, please. Right. And after a while, I felt as though I didn't want to make everybody around me feel sad. So let me just go cry over here real quick and then still show up for the people in my life. But that was, something else I had to navigate. And I will say this now, what I value, not so much I value, but I kind of think that rather than saying, please stop crying, because I do believe crying releases a lot of what you're, those emotions, and you feel better after you cry, right?
Yes.
It's more about, can I be here with you while you're in this sadness, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because it comes in waves and it will pass. But when I'm right in the midst of it, what I found most helpful and supportive is to somebody just say, you know what, I'm right here. And I'm not trying to fix anything, because I know there's nothing I can say. And I'm not expecting anybody to say anything either. But just having somebody there is also very powerful.
Thank you for sharing that, because I'm sure there's a lot of viewers who have gone through loss, but then there are also family members and friends who may just want to know, what do I do? They may have someone that they love and care about in the middle of loss, and they're trying to figure out, what do I do? How do I support them? What do I say? And
Yeah.
sometimes, you said it in your own way, but sometimes just being there and not necessarily saying anything, because, sometimes saying something, it just isn't helpful at the time, but just being there with them, allowing them to see you in their space, and just being there to support them in whatever they may be going through at that present time is
Yeah.
helpful. So
Yeah.
thank you for kind of diving in a little bit deeper with that, and really sharing that with us. So what were some, or was there any misconceptions that you faced about um, your emotions from others or yourself? I know you talked about, like, your family members just wanting you to be okay, to stop crying, to um, look the way that they wanted you to look, and be the way that you wanted you they wanted you to be, excuse me. And you touched upon that a little bit, but what were some misconceptions, if there were any, that you faced about your emotions from others or even yourself?
Yeah. There were times, especially, a year and a half in, where I thought, man, what's wrong with me, right? What is wrong with me? Because where everybody else expects me to be and where I really am, if I'm honest, there's a big gap there.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought there's something wrong. I felt a little bit out of my element and unsure of what to do. And that's when I really started to research it. So the misconceptions question, there's research that says, so young widows, those in the age range of 25 to 35, research shows that they have a heightened risk of poor adjustment, and they're more likely to undergo depression and what they call prolonged grief. So it takes longer to kind of get back to recalibrating, right? It's a very
Mm-hmm.
disorienting experience, and the research offers a number of reasons for that. One is that it's an off time event, meaning it's out of sequence, right? We all know, right? We're not going to live forever. But when something unexpected and tragic happens and your brain is telling you it's not actually supposed to happen this way, it's even more disorienting, and it takes some time to recalibrate, right? The second reason is a lack of a peer group. Right. I was 33. Most of my peers were either just getting married or just starting families, and nobody's going to sit around and talk about grief. A lot of people, had not experienced even that emotion for the first time. Right. Me personally, my husband's funeral was the first one I ever attended. Right. It was a lot. It was a lot. And so those were some of the things I learned that made me think, okay, there is a reason why I'm struggling, right? And had I perhaps known that sooner, maybe I would have reached out and asked for help, right? Maybe I would have sought more resources. So that was kind of the misconception, because I've had well-meaning people say, in trying to encourage, but it actually was hurtful to be like, how old are you? Oh, you're young. You'll be okay. And it's not that I didn't want to be okay, but it invalidated or minimized the very difficult thing that I was experiencing at the time. But again, the research does show that, hey, these things are difficult. Here's some reasons why. And I wanted to, again, share that with readers from the standpoint of raising awareness and also the empathy piece that I talked about.
Wow, you brought up something else that I feel is important to share, that grieving has no time limit. I often talk to my clients about that and share that as well. There is no time limit on grieving or the way that you should grieve, or how to allow other people to see is the right way to grieve. I think it's a personal journey, and you are in control of that journey on how you want to grieve in the time span in order to feel comfortable doing so. So I like to share that with people and just let them know you are not alone if you are grieving. If you feel like, other people may be sharing that you should be done. You should be over with this by now. You should, whatever it may be, X, Y, and Z, you have the ability to grieve within your own time limit, and um, take time to make sure that you're okay and go through what you need to go through to feel better within your time span in your moment. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. All right. Well, let me just kind of check in with you about something else. What helped you? This conversation is about overcoming. So, what helped you the most in coping with and overcoming a lot of the challenges that you're sharing today?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think one of the big things was the thought I had initially, which was, I need to be okay. I need to be completely healed, etc., before I live life, right? Or
Mm.
I need to stop grieving or wait for it to disappear, whatever the case may be. And because the commonly accepted framework is you go through these 5 stages and then you get back to life, and that's not necessarily the actual experience that we have with grief, right? It's
Right.
a helpful framework, but that's all it is. Sometimes it's helpful to organize things into neat boxes, but that's not always the case. So I got to a place where I realized that I'm now living in a dual reality, meaning grief and joy can coexist. And in a way, they kind of have to, if you're trying to still honor, the person you loved, right, and
Hmm.
not suppress it or not run away from those emotions, because somebody else said it. There's where love is real, grief is real, right? Where the depth of grief is the depth of love, right? So it's not necessarily that I'll never feel grief again, because that was, the person I loved in this whole world, right? So me feeling the grief shouldn't make me think, oh, there's still something wrong with me. No, it's just how love gets expressed as well. So that's one thing. So when those emotions come, and perhaps they're just not as intense as before, but I don't want to give the misconception that it disappears. It becomes familiar, and it evolves, and we learn to live life alongside it, right, with it. And then there's also still being grounded in the present. So even now, I've gotten the perspective to still appreciate life, to still have gratitude for the things that I still get to experience here. But there's still that grief. There's still that the thing there that is always with me. And I equated in the book to kind of getting used to your own shadow. Right? It's not going to stop you from living your life, but you acknowledge that it's still there, and that is okay. So finding peace with that truth really gave me freedom to still live life, still have moments where I still honor it, but I know that it passes. Those feelings are temporary, and they're not wrong to have. And the fact that they're still there is just another testament to the love that was there.
That's powerful. I can just honestly say that allowing people to understand and know it's okay to have multiple emotions at one time, and to grieve and have joy and so many other emotions. It's okay to do that. It's not a negative thing. It's not a bad thing to be joyful or to have periods of joy or other emotions about happiness or surrounding happiness in your
Yeah,
life. And
because I
it's
used
okay
to
to
feel
do that.
guilty. Yeah, I used
Yeah.
to feel guilty for a long time.
Yeah. So if someone is out there and they're listening to this and they're going through um, some things that we're discussing right now, and you have that sense of guilt, you have that just feeling like I shouldn't feel this way, I shouldn't have these good emotions too because I'm going through grief and loss. It's okay. It's okay to have those emotions, and allow yourself to feel it. Allow yourself to feel that peace that Bethel is just describing, because um, it's important for you to get to that point of realizing that you're not alone. It's okay to have those emotions, and it's steps forward in your healing journey. So,
Mhm.
all right. So let me just kind of reflect a little bit more with you and ask. I know you talked about a grief share group that you um, went to online, but are there any specific resources or even tools that you feel like, you know what, someone could be helped? I know you have your book, which is absolutely amazing, and I would like for you to share a lot more about that. So our viewers can know where to access your book and all the details about that. But can you share maybe a mixture of things about resources and tools for anyone feeling overwhelmed or going through some of the emotions that you described throughout this interview?
Sure. Yeah. So the biggest one I already mentioned, which was Grief Share. I had a grief counselor for the first 12 months of this, and I think it was just very helpful to talk about it, because again, these conversations, I'm glad we can have them on your platform, but grief is very uncomfortable to talk about and keep talking about
Mhm.
with friends and family. And just to digress, but it's related. There was one time, I think I was coming up on the 1 year mark or something, and a friend had called me the day before, and after a little bit of back and forth, she said, hey, I know what tomorrow is. I wasn't sure if I should bring it up. And I said, I'm always thinking about it. And of course, you know, I know what tomorrow is too, so you don't have to feel uncomfortable about it, right? So all of it to say, it is uncomfortable to talk about it, except when those of us where it is just our reality, right? But finding
Right.
the person like a grief counselor where you can, you know, have those conversations on a regular basis, because it is an everyday part of your life, I think could be helpful, because it was very helpful for me. And then, you know, everything else I kind of figured out on my own. And I share a lot of that in the book. But I will say this, a pivotal moment and that I write about in the book was when I got to a point of what now, right? You
Mhm.
kind of get to full acceptance of what was, and I'm looking ahead and thinking this grief will be there going forward, right? So now is a pivotal moment of where I get to choose how to move forward with it, and that is always a personal choice, because you know there's the self-destructive route, right? And there's sort of just trying to survive, hanging in there for a long time. It was one day at a time, hanging in there, or
Mhm.
allowing yourself to find a deeper meaning, deeper sense of purpose, allowing yourself to reimagine a future. I had to get to a place where, after, you know, year and a half of feeling stuck, that I'm at a dead end, and I can't think of anything else because I'm just mad and I'm just going to stay here. Or um, I just love this word reimagined, because I had to reimagine something I'd never considered before. And once you open up your mind to new possibilities, that's when something starts to stir in your heart, in your spirit. So I think that is something that I would offer to anybody going through something. Your feelings, your emotions, all of that is so valid. It's so valid. And while it's still there, allowing your mind to then think about new possibilities, new dreams, new goals, or what has this really highlighted as far as a deeper purpose I may have. Or now that I feel like I don't know what's meaningful anymore, what if I stayed in this moment long enough to find out what is meaningful to me now?
Mhm.
And for me, it's just focusing on being the present and enjoying time with the people I love, because now I have a greater appreciation that time is limited, right? We're not
Yeah.
promised tomorrow. So it's what I've lost, but then what have I also gained, right? So
Mhm.
it's allowing yourself to pivot a little bit, and that's going to help you rediscover hope, rediscover faith, and hopefully rediscover purpose, to then start moving in a different direction, right?
Yeah.
And for me, one last thing I would share about this, I was like, well, my plans are all messed up, right? You just throw the whole thing out. But then I thought, wait, maybe I don't need a plan. I just need a general direction, right? I just need a North Star. And how fast I get there is not even the point. But I've thought about something new, and I'm just going to move in that direction. And that's all I'm going to ask of myself right now. So that kind of helped me little by little.
Yeah, I like that, to take pressure off yourself, which just knowing that, look, I just need a direction. I don't need a plan. And so often in life, you know, having plans is kind of what I remember growing up. Have a plan, it's like plan A, plan B, and that's what I was taught and learned. I think many people do too. But just having a direction
Yeah.
is a softer way to look and to reflect on that, to know that you still can keep going. To still have hope and to continue to move in the direction, um, to get through everything that you're going through. So
Yeah.
thank you.
And one thing, it's not my quote, but I like it so much, I'm going to repeat it, is that nobody goes uphill on accident. So there is that level of intentionality
Mm-hmm.
required to get there. But I think if we decide that we want to get to higher ground, we want to get to a better place, and we've set a North Star, then the next step is then to start doing, right?
Yes, that journey. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
All
Mm-hmm.
right, wonderful. I'm so excited that you came on. I thank you so much for coming and sharing your story and just allowing us to hear your testimony, your story, and provide hope for us. So, how can they get in touch with you? How can they find your book? Can you share with us a little bit about that?
Sure. So the book will be available for purchase on January 6th. So I encourage everybody to please go to my website, which is reimaginedjourneys.com, plural, reimagined journeys. I told you I love that word. Um, and you could get updates there as soon as it's available. I'm going to send out an email with a link to purchase it. You can also get in touch with me on social media. I'm Bethel_Stevens on Instagram, so you can reach me there as well.
All right, wonderful. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you and for just being honest with us and raw with sharing your story, your journey. And thank you everyone for tuning in today. We really appreciate you for taking the time to join us, and we hope that you found today's conversation valuable. A huge thank you to Bethel for joining us today and for sharing insight on your story. I appreciate your time, and until next time, everyone, take care.
Thank you.
You're welcome.